You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Adrian hosting today. It's episode 259, and I welcome back a special guest, Andrew Amirnovin. Andrew, it's been a while, but welcome back on.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yes, but here you are, and we're diving in to an interesting topic today, early field failure analysis. And we're going to use this to hopefully fix problems before they escalate. And because you are a reliability guru, who better to go through EFFA? And hopefully what we can dig into is what's involved, how it's used, and I know you've got a bunch of really cool examples which are going to illustrate why EFFA is important by showing what happens maybe when it's not put in place, and certainly some examples that we want to avoid. So let's talk about what EFFA is and why it's so important for manufacturers.
This EFFA stands for Early Field Failure Analysis.
Mm.
It is really one of those most crucial programs that pretty much all big companies already have in place. But a while back, I would say, like maybe 10, 20 years ago, not much was being done in this front. A
Mm.
lot of companies would basically iron out all the design and development issues, and they would actually run, maybe 5K of product, and they would see, oh, there's no issues. Everything went well. So they would go ahead and just launch the product. The problem is that a lot of times there may be problems with the product that has nothing to do with the design, nothing to do with, maybe nothing to do with the component, but there will always be some kind of manufacturing issue, you know? And these manufacturing issues, sometimes they're so tiny, minute, or intermittent that you won't know it unless you start going into higher volumes. We're talking like over 100,000 units. That's
Mm.
when you start definitely seeing the first sign is when you see the first pass yield drop. And that's a bad sign. That's a that's a sign that something is happening in the manufacturer and needs to be taken serious and implement corrective action immediately on those failures from the first pass, and need to understand where these failures are happening. Now, granted that all kinds of failures always happen in the first pass,
Mm.
especially when you just launching, the product. I'm talking about like the first 5,000. There's things that needs to be tuned out, kind of like, for example, temperature in the soldering soldering oven and solder paste or pick and place machines need to be tuned out, making sure that, they're picking the components properly and placing it properly. All this stuff, okay, needs to be tuned.
Mm.
But even after you tune them up, you'll still have some first pass yield issues.
Mhm.
And these could be, a lot of them could be related to just pick and place machine, where you take the component, you take the devices that didn't pass, and you take them to, we used to call them, what do they call them? Rework station.
Okay.
So you take them to rework station and you start analyzing, failure analysis done on all of those. And then you realize a lot of times it's just either a paste issue, solder issue, misplacement, missing components, just typical stuff that happens in manufacturing. So a lot of times you rework those, put the components back on, retest them, finalize them, and they're good to go. Okay.
Mm.
However, once in a while, you have issues that is unknown. You just don't know where the problems are, or it will completely pass the production line test, and it will be actually part of the first pass yield. However, once they get to the destination, to the hands of the the client and the customers, all of a sudden you have amazing amount of return and you're wondering what the heck happened.
Right.
Uh, so in those kind of situations, you definitely need to have an early field failure analysis program. You need to have design engineers, reliability engineers, quality engineers, field engineers, customer, let's say, correspondence. You need to have someone who really analyzes the field data, and then you need to figure out what is going on. And otherwise, things are just going to go crazy right after that.
Hmm. So you're talking about, for example, PCBs, right? So we're putting the components onto the PCB, soldering them,
Correct.
and this is happening in mass production. So a lot of PCBs going through.
That's
Of
right.
course, you've got your pilot run, and you'll be trying to test and tweak things. But as you said, when you're doing your first production run, there's still perhaps going to be learnings to find, right? But if these PCBs get into products and they've got a soldering issue, for example, then they're going to that's going to manifest itself in reliability issues with the products. Some of them might be fine, but on the other hand, somebody might get an electronic product that one of the buttons stops working or one of the functions stops working because something's not soldered correctly, or maybe the device dies after a period of time. this is what we don't this is what we don't want to happen once products get into the field, right? And so
Exactly.
that's why we want to do EFFA. That's why we want to implement this. So it's kind of like an activity to put in place to reduce the risk of reliability issues once products get into the field, right?
Absolutely. It is exactly that. And in some companies, they call it early warning system. Basically, it's all about detecting if there's any failures in the field that could multiply
Mm,
once you go into higher volumes. That's really it. Because if you react immediately in the first, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks of production, there's a good chance you're going to figure out what the problems are before, you lose your customers or
yeah.
you have to recall millions of product.
Yeah, because you've got so many out there by that point that the problem just snowballs, and then you've got
Exactly.
big problems rather than being able to, as we would say here in the UK, nip it in the bud early
That's
and
right.
avoid a big sort of recall. Which I was gonna say something rude then, a big S storm, yeah, which you certainly don't want to deal with, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I get that. That's very clear. And anybody mass producing is hopefully nodding along and thinking, yep, we don't want that. So, can you talk us through how you would use this to identify what we're calling early field failures then? How do we actually implement this sort of process, and what signs are we looking out for?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, a lot of times this happens is because, you know, most companies want to cut corners, whether in cost or timeline. A lot of the companies don't want to cut costs in quality or reliability. However, here and there, sometimes they're, you know, basically either short in time to get to market or they just don't have the extra money to spend on doing extra activities that in their mind maybe, well, we'll just take care of it later when it comes.
Hmm.
Uh, Fortunately, as you and I know, pay me now or pay me later. If you spend the money and time right now, you probably have to spend a lot less money later, and
Hmm.
you don't have to deal with all the issues with the customers. But well, how does this happen? That's one reason, and a lot of times, sometimes they even have EFF program, but it's just not very effective. And the reason is because you need to have a very good data analysis, data tracking, field data tracking process.
Hmm.
So if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to detect issues that are happening in the field because, customers return things. Sometimes they return things that there's even nothing wrong with them because we call those customer remorse, right? They just bought it and they changed their mind. On the other hand, some customers do have issues. They do send it to companies, but companies are so busy most of the time at that level. And things just kind of like swept under the carpet, you know. Okay, here it is, a new one, and they basically replaced the customer. Customer is gone and happy, but then on this side, they didn't have time to really investigate it and fix the problem. And
Yes,
next
it
thing you know,
doesn't solve the problem. Yeah.
they didn't solve the problem, and there's more and more customers coming. And this
Mm.
can happen in a company for various reasons. I mean, it could be one engineer causing all this problem and then not doing his job. It
Mm.
could be the whole department is just slacking off. And it could also be that they don't have any proper process in place. So in any case, this is really is one of those things that you gotta have a failure tracking, data collection, root cause analysis. You have to have a whole school, whole process planned ahead of time and put in place where it's actually going to detect and catch those issues as soon as there's one or two failures. You got one coming in today, you track it, another two more coming tomorrow, and all of a sudden four is coming the next day. You have a trend building. So you
Mm.
should be able to catch it and raise the alarm. Hey, we're starting to have more and more of this particular failure mode. And then all it needs to be done is send all of those similar. And of course, you got to do Pareto analysis. And the Pareto analysis is crucial for field failure return tracking because that's when you figure out what is the highest issues that is causing 80% of the problems. And if you
Hmm.
fix that one issue, 80% is gone, is fixed, basically.
Yeah.
And so, but again, knowing how to do that, understanding Pareto analysis, having a process in place where, all these failures go into the Pareto analysis automatically
Mm.
is a huge undertaking, especially if you're a high volume producer. It really is a huge undertaking. But if it's done well, it's not that hard. Most of them you can actually automate the process. Some of it are manual, but still there's a element of automation. So all of that can happen. But real-time failure reporting is the key. They need to make
Mm.
sure that things that are coming in from the field are immediately logged into the database, and the database is doing automatic charts and graphs and spitting out warnings to or emails automatically to the appropriate parties who are supposed to react
Yep.
and do something about it.
But that's the early, isn't it? Right. The whole point of
Right.
this is that it's done early and you react quickly to take action and then prevent problems from, as we said earlier, from snowballing. So, yeah, I totally get that. And with the Pareto analysis, I mean, it's good that if it's done properly, it's not too difficult, obviously, by somebody that's skilled and really understands. But if that person does hit upon something that can be fixed and really lead to a big impact, a big positive impact, oh, that person's earning their money.
Right, right, exactly. And honestly, between you and I mean, the problems could be so many, and
Mm.
it could just be software update. Software update alone fixes a lot of the issues. When the
Oh,
when they
these days with
it
electronic products, so many, yeah.
right, right. So as soon as you accumulate lots of these field returns, as we've talked before,
Hmm.
you need to run a very good triage system
Mm.
where you can actually kind of like separate like type issues. Like if it's all software related, you know, categorize them in this section and then pile them up here. And then if it's all hardware issues, pile them up over here and then keep going. And then you need to do early failure trend analysis. That could be anything. It could be statistical process control, could be machine learning,
Hmm.
could detect, these unusual issues or patterns, could be reviewing the warranty claims, service requests, customer complaints. I mean, there's a lot involved in there, right? So once you log in all these information, categorize them, triage them, and put them all together, then the data is easier to kind of understand. Okay, this is going to go to engineering. This is going to go to customer service. This is going to go, and everyone is all of a sudden working on it at the same time.
Mm,
And that's where the effect of, you know, proper prevention happens. If you don't, if everyone does not get on it right away, this could go on for a long time. I mean, it needs to be coordinated effort.
yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking, if you're a hardware startup and you're, quite early in the journey of bringing products to market, you're probably not at the point of mass production if you are still, developing and things like that. Maybe this is not such a concern yet, right? But if you're going into mass production, probably you're working with a manufacturer. I suppose this is the sort of thing that you want to be bearing in mind and asking the manufacturer, like, do you have this in place or are you putting something like this in place? Are you running an EFFA program? Because, we're now going to be doing runs of, I don't know, 10, 20, 50,000 products. Once these go into the market, we need to make sure that issues or potential issues are found early. So you're not maybe going to be doing this yourself, but you should be questioning the manufacturer how they handle this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you were manufacturing less than 10,000 units, I'm just going to give some numbers so it's easier to understand for
Yeah,
our
yeah.
listeners. So if you were manufacturing 10,000 units, you know, mm, chances of having massive failures is low because through the development process, you probably caught all the big, big hitters that could be a problem. So only minor things could be happening through 10,000 units. Okay. But as soon as you start going through 100,000 units or more, like million units, you're going to have all kinds of issues that some of which you could actually address and some of
Mm,
which may not, because the problems could be all kinds of problems. Because when you're talking about million volume, you're talking about several suppliers that have million parts each. And so each one of those could have some variances in their parts and the quality of their parts, right? And then you've got each one of those could have all kinds of production issues, material issues, that all of those come to your product. And and then a lot of times you don't know it until you actually produce it. And then as you go through the high volumes, you end up having lower yields. You're wondering why. And then you start seeing, okay, there's component issue here, material issue here,
mm,
design issue here, manufacturing issue here. So they just multiply, in higher volumes. And the reason multiply because, you're making, 1 or 2 million products and you have, let's say 0.05% failure. Well, it seems a lot, but it's not a lot compared to the volume. It
mm.
just seems a lot. Everything that we do in our life is never perfect. There's always certain amount of defect rate.
Right.
Uh, it's just that we don't notice it when it's so tiny and small, like
Mm,
0.001%, we don't realize it. But
hmm.
when you're doing a lot, I mean, if you were taking a motorcycle to work every day of your life, you think you're not going to ever have an accident in
Mm.
10 years. Trust me,
Well,
eventually you will.
even driving an automobile, it's the same thing,
Right,
no? Or even taking public transport. You think
right,
you think the train's never going to break down in your whole life?
right. That's the point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So no, I think that's a good question, and really the only way to address it is if any company is planning to have high volume production, they need to have two processes in place. I would definitely recommend EFFA for sure,
Mm,
but I also recommend ongoing reliability testing, which could help EFFA. Because if you're running ongoing reliability testing in production in the first 30 to 60 days, then you're going to catch most likely all these inconsistencies or issues in manufacturing.
hmm. Okay.
Now, as soon as you catch them, you'll have a decision to make. Am I going to shut down the production or I can do in process improvements, you know? So, but it will be that's one of the things that we recommend all the time. Ongoing reliability test and ORT is crucial.
Hmm.
And in fact, in some cases for low volumes like 50,000 or something between 10,000 and 50,000, ORT is so good that you may not need EFFA. So, that's what we're talking about. But when you go over 1 million units of production, most likely you need both to keep track of what's happening in the field.
Mm. Yeah, we've spoken about ORT before. There's definitely resources that I'll be sharing in the show notes there, and also the pay now or pay more later with regards to, reliability. I know you did a video about that, so I'll try and find that and put that in, and talking about how to triage products coming in and return rates. You've written some good stuff about that on a Gillian's blog. So yeah, just flagging it up early. Check the show notes, people. There'll be some good complimentary info there. Okay, Andrew, let's crack on. So
No, I was gonna
yeah.
interject here something. I Did you hear what happened just this month with Tesla?
Well, this is a real world example of probably a lack of EFFA, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
talk us talk us
I mean,
through
I
that
don't know. To be
because
honest, I'm not in. To be honest, I'm sorry I interrupted you. By the way, I'm sorry. I am not in Tesla, so I don't know exactly if they have EFFA or not. But they had roughly about 380,000 recall
hmm.
for power steering assist issue. Apparently, some of these, when you're trying to steer, you couldn't because
Right.
the assist wasn't working, and they have about over 3,000 warranty claims. People are just left and right coming and complaining, "Hey, I just bought this car and I can't steer or something is wrong." How serious can that be, right?
Oh yeah. Well,
So
yeah. Well, my understanding it's at low speeds, right? But at the end of the day, like let's say you're in a parking lot or something, and then your power steering goes, you're gonna you're basically gonna crash it. I don't know. Like I'm of an age where all cars have power steering, but I think maybe if we go back sort of, I don't know, 40, 50 years, some cars did not have power steering. And I mean, if you cast your mind back and think about how that would be, right? It's heavy, it's really heavy, but in this case, it would be almost impossible to steer the car.
exactly. But the point is, you might want to ask the question, why did this happen? Tesla is a great company. I'm a believer in Elon Musk. I think that he's made an amazing company there. But why would you have such a serious and critical failure? I could say that most likely they have some kind of EFFA program, but didn't catch it. Maybe they don't have ORT program, didn't catch it. Maybe they don't have a component qualification process where, this particular part of power steering needs to be revalidated from the suppliers, or maybe they don't have a good supplier process for that particular product, or maybe it's a design issue. I don't know. All I know is that this is one of those problems that could have been prevented.
Oh yeah. And what did you say? It was sort of nearly 400,000 cars recalled.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that is going to be,
And
well,
that's
it's
just
got a
this
huge
month.
impact. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in February, right? We're in
Hmm.
February 27 right now.
Yep.
So this is happening as we speak. And so 400,000 almost right now. Imagine what's going to be like by the end of the year. I don't know. All I know is that this could have been prevented by a
Mm.
proper ORT program, proper component supplier and quality program, and probably by having an EFFA in place.
Maybe,
Again,
maybe he fired the people to save money that were running it.
I doubt it, honestly. I think Elon is the kind of guy that, where there is money needs to be spent, he will.
Mm.
It seems that way. I mean, I know he's penny pinching at some places, but I don't think he's one of those that would, when it comes to quality and reliability, I think he would spend.
But this is
I
going to
think,
be enormously expensive to fix, for 500,000 cars and
right.
put new power
Well,
steering in them. That's going to be
exactly.
big.
Not to mention those people who bought the car may not go and buy a Tesla again.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, that could have killed them,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I mean, it's just one of those things that it kind of shocks you, when you don't expect to see something like this happening. You wonder, well, I would love to know what the root cause was, honestly. Uh, I think it could be very similar to, if you remember, the Toyota had airbags
The
that were
airbags, yeah.
yeah, the Tagate or something,
Hmm.
airbags were bursting and exploding and killing people because of the
Mm.
stuff inside. The metals were rusting and breaking, and then when it happened, boom, the shrapnel could just go
Yes.
straight to her head. So, I mean, it could be something like that. They trusted and they already qualified the supplier, but the supplier somehow let them down.
Hmm.
It's hard to tell,
Yeah.
honestly, at this point. I'm sure we'll find out, but that's just one example of how things like that can happen.
Mm.
Uh,
And that's a good one. That's timely because that's right now. But I mean, actually, off air before we started recording, you mentioned there's an even bigger one, like the one about Firestone tires again in the
yeah.
States. That is crazy. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So way, way back, I think it was like 1990s, late 1990s, Firestone was the main supplier of tires to Ford.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, Ford customers were complaining, having their tires exploding while they're driving. Can you imagine if it was a front tire exploding and you'd
Just
just be out of control and
that's
dying? The
horrendous.
major injuries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was being reported left and right, and companies, I guess, I don't know exactly why they took their time, despite all these indications and reports of injuries and accidents. Up until 1996, they didn't do much about it. But eventually, Firestone and Ford implemented a comprehensive early field failure analysis. They did it like after close to 6, 7 years. But again, they didn't really do huge amount of, how do you say, prevention through that process, because I guess they had already shipped so many. And guess what happened? In year 2000, they had a massive recall of 6.5 million cars with those tires.
It's just a
6.5,
unbelievably vast number.
yeah, 6.5 million tires being recalled. And honestly, I think Firestone went out of business after that. Nobody wanted to buy it because Michelin has this slogan, "Your life is riding on it."
Mm.
You know, when your tire explode, you have no idea what's going to happen. So it's really scary. Also, there was another example that you and I kind of had talked about it, I think. Let me see if I can pull that one up, because I think the amount of, oh yeah, the Volkswagen issue, because this goes to some of the downside of not having the program that we wanted to talk about. So one of the downsides of not having, EFFA is when basically regulatory agencies will scrutinize and figure out what you're not doing right. And then you could
Mhm.
be in trouble. And supposedly 2015, you might have heard about Volkswagen Diesel,
Dieselgate.
Dieselgate.
Yeah,
That's
so that's in 2015. This is primarily focused on the US though, and the
that's right,
EP
US
and the
side.
EPA that really went after Volkswagen.
Right. And they found out that they were passing emission test, and especially California,
Mm.
right? But
Mm,
in reality, they weren't passing.
no,
So I don't know how they did that. So it would look like they were passing, but they weren't.
my, my
And
my understanding is they'd actually installed something into the
right,
diesel vehicles that basically
faked.
faked the test results
That
when the vehicles were tested, it would return results that were not correct. And
exact.
I think it was like they were reducing maybe the emissions being tested during the test, and then as soon as the car was off the ramp, the emissions would just go straight back up again to something that was not legal.
Right, exactly. And so imagine how much they were fined. Can you
Oh yeah.
guess?
Well, I I can't imagine. I'm not sure, but yeah, illuminate us.
Well, they were charged and fined $30 billion
Oh no.
plus criminal charges. I mean, this is unreal. I can't even believe if it wasn't Volkswagen and some other company, would they even be in business
Oh
now?
yeah, probably. Well, probably not. I mean, you saw what happened with the Samsung phone, the Galaxy Note 7 that we've talked about before,
Right.
the exploding phone, everybody's favorite example, right? But that nearly took Samsung down. And so yeah, I imagine this was really bad. I think people actually lost jobs and maybe yeah, got in legal trouble because of that. Some of the executives at Volkswagen.
Pretty sure. I mean, you mentioned Samsung Galaxy Note 7 battery issue. That was a $5 billion recall.
Mm,
And yeah, you're right. I'm not sure if heads turned on that one or not, but that was a major inconvenience for all customers. A lot of CEOs who were carrying Samsung devices those
mm,
days, they actually basically opted for
mm.
iPhone because they couldn't get on the airplane with Samsung.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great marketing for Apple, but not great for Samsung. And the same for Volkswagen. I mean, I think in the US, and I don't know if it's quite as serious in Europe, but I think in the US after that, it caused Volkswagen to pivot towards EVs a lot more. So they want to kind of be known for EVs. Now, I know recently, like I think during the Super Bowl, maybe they were advertising like the electronic camper van style vehicle, the
Yes.
Volkswagen maybe. So I think that's what they're trying to do. And I mean, we all know why that is, right? So it's like, oh no, we're clean now. But
Well, just imagine between you and I how hard they have to work to recoup 30 billion.
oh man, yeah, it's crazy. So through these examples, actually, we've seen quite a lot of the downsides of not having an EFFA program. Then, because not only do we have the costs of the recall, we've got the legal costs, we've got the fines, right? We've got the damaged
But
reputation.
there's one more thing that we haven't talked about. The
Okay,
reputation.
well, yeah.
Reputation is the key for making money, right? That's
Oh
where
yeah.
talking about branding, branding that says, hey, I have a product that stands for quality, stands for reliability. Well, that doesn't work well for Boeing.
Oh
Uh, Remember we had the Boeing
yeah.
737 Max podcast. Yet this is a major issue, and still Boeing is having all kinds of problems, not even to date. Am I right?
But I think so. But I think they're kind of lucky in that basically Boeing and Airbus have got a monopoly on air travel, unless you're on much smaller airplanes, right?
Right,
So, I
right.
mean, I fly quite a bit, and no doubt I'm flying on 737 Maxes. And unless I specifically try to select airlines that don't use Boeing every single time I fly, which I don't, I just book a ticket and go like most normal people, right? So
Right.
basically I'm flying on these aircraft, and to heck with the consequences, sort of thing. So yeah, it's kind of, I guess most people sort of don't really consider it, but yeah, it's definitely a potential issue. And yeah, they've had a damaged reputation, but does that mean people aren't buying Boeings? I'm not sure. I don't know, but
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we can see the data that Airbus have picked up a bit more business recently.
yeah, absolutely right. And there was another one that comes to my mind when in 2010, when
Mm.
Apple was making the iPhone 4, they had flawed antenna design. I
Okay.
mean, can you imagine having a flawed antenna design that was dropping the calls? I mean,
Well,
repeat drop calls. Ca They could have caught that with ORT. They could have caught
mm,
that through the development, design, and reliability testing. So
mm,
I am honestly baffled why that kind of a serious design issue was even found
yeah, absolutely.
after post-production.
Mm,
Do you agree? So that is a major no-no. You don't see a major design issue post-production nowadays.
yep.
But at that time this happened. And I think that's a total failure of not having an effective ORT or effective reliability testing during development and or EFFA process.
Yeah, these are snafus that we want to avoid. And despite the costs and the reputational damage as well, you're missing the opportunity to improve. You're letting products go out there and fail, and it's causing you problems. And if you're working on triaging them and finding out the problems early, which is the whole point, you know,
Exactly.
you're actually able to improve them quickly and avoid the issues. So yeah, a number of downsides and manifesting in those, well, terrible examples that you gave. So yeah, absolutely.
So I think if I had to summarize, honestly,
Yeah.
it all comes down to this. You need to have a very comprehensive DFX process during your development process.
Mm,
So you need to make sure you designing in the reliability, designing in for quality, the stability, and the manufacturability. So you're making sure that your design has all these basically noted and designed in or somehow supports all these areas, right? Now,
yes.
but you need to make sure that you have proper testing, whether it's software, hardware, reliability testing, compliance testing, making sure that your tests are catching non-conformancies, things that don't conform to either requirements and or specifications.
Mm,
Uh, and if you don't have this kind of testing, then you are basically not knowingly, you're letting some of these issues into manufacturing. And then manufacturing always has its own issues. And then you're going to combine all these issues from development into manufacturing. Now you're going to have a much more difficult issue to figure out. And that's why typically at least you want to have an ORT process so that at least you can isolate and or confirm that, okay, we have no reliability issues, right?
mm,
Or through that ORT process, you'll catch issues related to component suppliers, supplier quality, and or even design issues before you let too many products out, and then when you have the EFFA process, that means, okay, things did go out, but we need to know what's bad out there.
mm,
So that's what EFFA does. EFFA is post-launch warning, letting you know, uh-oh, we just shipped first run of the 5,000 units and 2,000 are no good. 2,000 customers are complaining. So you need to look at the reviews. You need to track and get all of those bad devices back, bad product back. And you need to do very detailed, thorough, and timely corrective action and root cause analysis, and corrective action, root cause analysis first, and then corrective action on top of that. And then that's pretty much the only way. If you incorporate all of those corrective actions into the new product and then start building brand new products without those issues, pretty much the only way you're gonna stop and put a band-aid on it. And you don't want to put a band-aid on it, by the way. That's a bad analogy. Band-aid means temporary fix. But what you want to do, you want to basically fix it forever. And then, in my opinion, that's the only way.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So takeaways, ORT and EFFA. That's what you want to be thinking about to really reduce
in
the
the
risks.
production, in the production and post-production. Yes. In development, definitely is DFX.
Yeah, so DFX with a focus on quality, reliability, and whether the aspects are particularly important for your product.
Yeah, that's
Great.
right. And I think maybe, people need to know that we do a lot of high quality reliability testing during our product development. And we also do ORT. We also do something that some of our customers don't realize and forget about it. And that's, ISTA testing, transportation testing, which is critical for their product. A lot of times, perfect product shipped, all of a sudden you have, not turning on at the destination, all because things happened during the transportation that impacted the reliability and quality of product. And now the customer receives a product that is dead on arrival.
Yeah, and if only there'd been like a bit of, I don't know, polystyrene packing put in the box or something like that, it could have been avoided. So yeah, a complete waste. Right. Yeah. That's a really good one. Good. It's been a while since we've had a reliability chat. So yeah, I've enjoyed this, and I think some really, really helpful takeaways there for the listeners. You've mentioned a heap of different aspects that I can give links to. A lot of it, either with yourself or written by you as well. So links in the show notes. Andrew, it's been a pleasure. We'll get you on again sometime soon.
Same here. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.